Hi everyone, my name is Melody Gronsky, and today I'm going to be presenting on the Community Analysis and Intervention Plan to reduce suicide in Appalachian, Ohio. So, suicide in general is a significant public health problem across the entire United States, and it touches every age group and community. But this presentation is specifically going to focus on youth living in Appalachian, Ohio. In this case, youth is defined as persons between the ages of 10 and 24. I chose this population because the rate of youth suicide has increased dramatically over recent years and is growing faster than any other age group. And the Appalachian region is more significantly impacted by this issue than the rest of the state of Ohio. The three counties with the highest overall suicide rates in the state were in this region. So, some evidence to kind of back up the fact that this problem exists and is important. The trend of increasing rates of suicide among children and young adults is very severe in the state of Ohio. The rate of suicide among people in that age group increased by 64% over about the last 10 years. The counties in Ohio with the highest rates of suicide are considered Appalachian, and they're also classified as economically distressed, meaning they rank in the worst 10% of the nation's counties on factors of 3-year average unemployment rates, per capita market income, and poverty rates. So there's a very clear correlation with a lot of the challenges these Appalachian counties are experiencing and the high suicide rates. If you look at this map, it is a really powerful image to me to show just how significantly this region is being impacted. So on the left-hand side, you can see which of Ohio's counties are considered Appalachian. And then on the right-hand side, you can see Ohio's annual suicide rates by county. And the ones that are darker green have the highest rates. So you can see how closely these maps mirror one another in which counties have high suicide rates and which counties are Appalachian. There are a lot of risk and protective factors related to suicide and youth suicide that specifically apply to the Appalachian community. Some are a little bit more broad. So things like mental health disorders, limited access to treatment, substance abuse, isolation, easy access to weapons, and stigma are all very significant risk factors that the CDC has identified. Um, Poverty is not an officially identified risk factor, but it does obviously create additional barriers and increase the severity the other risks could have on a person. And then on the right-hand side, there's a list of some of the protective factors that I feel are especially relevant to Appalachian Ohio, such as a strong community and cultural bonds, um, when there is effective clinical care for different physical, mental, and substance abuse disorders, and religious or cultural beliefs that discourage suicide are also protective factors. There are significant needs and gaps in service within this community. For example, Meeks County, which has the highest suicide rate in the state, has only 3 mental health facilities, and those 3 are actually all in the same city. So a lot of people living in that county are having to travel far distances, or there may not be enough appointments available for them to get the care that they need. And as we saw on the last slide, whether or not you have access to that critical mental health care is huge in being either a risk or protective factor for you. Uh, Mental health care is just generally unavailable in regions like this. One journal I read showed that rurality and per capita income were the best predictors of unmet need. And unfortunately, those are 2 characteristics that really well describe Appalachian Ohio. Mental illness rates aren't necessarily higher, but there is a greater stigma around mental health and services. So it may be harder to get treatment because it's not available and because there's a greater stigma. So you may not feel as comfortable seeking out treatment. Telepsychiatry and telehealth are good resources that can fill the gap, but obviously this service can only be utilized by people who already have the appropriate technology and have reliable internet. As we've all learned recently, these services are good and can definitely help people, but they can't completely replace in-person interaction. And 28% of households in Appalachian, Ohio actually don't have any kind of internet subscription at all, including dial-up. And dial-up is likely not going to be able to effectively support something that has such high needs as telehealth. And then on top of that, you have to also have a webcam and the other things that you would need. That lack of reliable internet has reported in clients actually driving to McDonald's parking lots to have their telehealth appointment to access that free Wi-Fi. So that just creates additional barriers. People could overhear their conversations. It's just very much a less than ideal way to treat these people that are having mental health challenges and suicidal thoughts. There are some assets to the community as well, obviously. A few that I've specifically identified for the purpose of this assignment is the CAIA Jackson Meeks Board of Alcohol, Drug Addiction, and Mental Health Services. So this program funds local programming, reviews and audits services, assesses different community needs, and just collaborates in general to provide services. The Meeks County Suicide Prevention Committee is another great resource. It's just a local group of citizens that have banded together to advocate for and educate their community about the suicide crisis and try to help the people that they love to be protected from this. Another asset that I think is really significant is public schools. I know that rural public schools tend to get a bad rap, but there are actually some ways in which these schools are better suited to help their kids. For example, they have a lower than average student-teacher ratio than the rest of the state in Meeks County, and they also have higher than average graduation rates. They're in the 90% of students that are graduating. So they have a large number of teachers interacting with almost all of the youth that live in this community. And then another is just the community associations that exist in this area. The social association rate in Appalachian, Ohio is actually 37% higher than the rate found in the nation. So that rate is just saying how many people are involved in something, whether it be their church, a 4-H group, a veterans association, any kind of club or gathering that people are involved in. So this just shows that the community is generally pretty well connected, and those community associations can have a really big positive impact on youth with suicidal thoughts. So the intervention that I would like to move forward with to resolve this problem or reduce this problem is called Signs of Suicide, or SOS. There are a lot of evidence-based interventions for this population. One systematic review that I read showed that some of the best ones included reducing access to lethal means, pharmacological interventions, psychotherapy, and school-based programming. I chose to go with a school-based intervention like SOS because that allowed us to take advantage of the community's assets in the best way, whereas pharmacology and psychotherapy providers are pretty limited in this region. So trying to implement those sort of interventions would be leaning into a weakness as opposed to trying to fortify a strength. This specific intervention has led to significantly fewer suicide attempts among intervention used relative to untreated controls in random control experiments with socially, economically, and geographically diverse high school students. And that was proven multiple times in 2004, 2007, and 2015. So this intervention is very evidence-based and has worked in a lot of different settings, like technical schools, inner city schools, schools with different racial makeups, different things like that. And this intervention can be implemented with minimal staff training and doesn't put a huge burden on the teachers, counselors, or administrative staff. The cost to implement this in all three Meeks County high schools would only be about $1,500. That's a very attainable intervention to implement. The intervention has a two-pronged approach. One is curricula to raise awareness of suicide and its related issues by teaching the students to acknowledge the signs, care for the people demonstrating those signs, and to tell a trusted adult. And the second part is a brief screening for depression and other risk factors associated with suicidal behavior. So the students can self-score themselves and see how they score on that screening for depression. And the screening tool does direct students to seek help if they have a score within a certain threshold. So the goals that I've outlined for this intervention is really simply to just reduce suicide rates among youth living in Appalachian, Ohio, and some objectives that I've put into place to make sure we're on track for that goal. The first would be to implement SOS in all three Meeks County high schools in the next 12 months. And before the 2021 commencement, all graduating seniors will have participated in the intervention. And then after 12 months, the number of youths attempting suicide in Meigs County will be reduced by at least 30%. So to kind of further demonstrate this plan, this is my logic model that I've put in that outlines what we've discussed, the needs in the community, the things we'll be putting in place, the activities we'll be doing, and then some of the goals and outcomes that we hope to see. And hopefully our ending impact will be fewer youth suicides in Appalachian, Ohio. Here are my references, and thank you so much for listening.